Hey, yes, how you doing? Yeah, doing well. December 3rd. 2023. We'll have a BZA meeting update. All right. So we have one the 5th and one the 19th. Yeah. All right, it's 5:20, so we'll go ahead and get started, and hopefully we'll be a full board in a matter of minutes. But this is the June 3rd, 2025 meeting of the City of Charleston Board of Zoning Appeals Zoning. Present here today are Hal Morris, not yet, Robin Richards, John Bennett, Bill Goodwin Jr., Chappie McKay, Gordon Huey, and me, your chair, Beth Tibbles. Also present, we have planning and zoning staff here as well. To my right is Mr. Summerfield, and Matt is here as well to join us and help us this evening. These proceedings are being recorded, and we ask that those who speak, please identify yourselves for the record. We will conduct this meeting in usual fashion. We will first receive information from city staff about the application and their recommendation. If the recommendation is favorable and no one objects to the application, the matter is uncontested. The Board of Zoning Appeals usually, but not always, approves uncontested applications. For all applications, the board reserves the right to ask questions of the staff, applicant, or others in attendance prior to rendering a decision. If, however, the city recommends against the application, or if there is opposition to the application, we treat the application as contested, and we hear from the applicant and anyone else who is in favor of the application. Next, we hear from anyone opposed, followed by a short rebuttal from the applicant. We then close the public hearing portion of the meeting for that particular application and open discussion to the Board of Zoning Appeals members only. We will then make a decision to approve with conditions, or deny the application. The Board of Zoning Appeals zoning has the authority to do three things. Number one, hear appeals to decisions of the zoning administrator. Number two, grant special exceptions, a fact-finding function of the board. And number three, grant variances to the zoning ordinance if the application meets the hardship test outlined in section 54-924 of the ordinance. The board may deliberate and make a final decision on a matter by a majority vote of members present at the hearing and qualified to vote, provided that not less than a quorum is present and qualified to vote. However, an affirmative vote of 2/3 of the board members present and voting shall be required before a use variance may be granted. For a variance to be granted, the Board of Zoning Appeals must make the following findings. A, that there are extraordinary and exceptional conditions pertaining to the particular piece of property. B, these conditions do not generally apply to other property in the vicinity. C, because of these conditions, the application of the ordinance to the particular piece of property would effectively prohibit or unreasonably restrict the utilization of the property. And D, that the authorization of a variance will not be of substantial detriment to adjacent property or to the public good, and the character of the district will not be harmed by the granting of the variance. By our city's ordinance, I'm required to ask you to swear an oath to tell the truth if you intend to speak tonight. So if you do intend to speak, please raise your right hand. If you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, you'll signify by saying, "I do."
I do.
Thank you. We don't have any deferrals, is that right, Robert?
All right.
Okay, so we've got a full agenda this evening, and so we'll get right into it. A, review of minutes and deferred applications from previously advertised BZA-Z agendas. Number one, review minutes of the May 20, 2025 meeting. The draft meeting minutes have been circulated to you, board members, in your packet of material for this meeting. Anybody have any questions or comments? Do I have a motion? Motion provided. Mr. McKay moves to approve. Mr. Bennett seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. Mr. Goodwin abstains. As he was absent from the May 20th meeting, everybody else voted to approve the minutes, and therefore the minutes are adopted by a vote of 5-0. All right. Next item on our agenda, A2, 188 Cummings Street, Cannonboro, Elliottboro, Council District 4, PMS number 460-12-01-047, Zone DR2F, requesting a variance from Section 54-301 to allow a new single-family home with 3-foot south side and 3-foot north side setbacks. 7 feet and 3 feet are required. The owner applicant is Edward DeCress. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this is an item that we heard actually at, I believe, our last meeting. The property here is just a little bit north of Morris on Cummings Street. The proposal would be, here's the aerial, proposal would be to build a new single-family home in the rear of this property. It was deferred by the board because they had requested that clearer understanding of how the parking would be addressed on this site. And so we did work with the applicant. They did provide an updated site plan and image packet to demonstrate that the site can park 4 vehicles as would be required, 2 for each of the dwelling units. Admittedly, it is potentially tight in a few areas, but at least per their drawings, they will be able to satisfy parking requirements on site for both the existing residents and the new single family home that's being built in the rear. And with that, you can see the elevations that they have supplied. Those have had some additional measurements put on them. They do have letters of support from other owners in or residents in the area, specifically on Moore Street. And with that, staff was recommending approval of this. We were satisfied with the updated site plan that it is able to demonstrate that they're able to maneuver, get a car back there. And they are demonstrating residentially compliant parking spaces.
All right, thank you. So the city is recommending approval of the application. Do we have anybody here in opposition to the application? If we do, I see a hand. All right, seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner applicant here? Yes, sir. Anything you'd like to say?
No, sir.
All right, seems like you've worked things out with your neighbor since he's not here.
We sold it the next week.
Ah, okay. Go figure. All right, anybody have any questions for the owner, for the city? Any discussion? Do I hear a motion?
I'll move approval.
All right, Mr. Bennett moves to approve. Is there a second? Mr. McKay seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes, and the special exception for, excuse me, the variance. The variance for 188 Cummings Street is approved. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Next item on our agenda, B, new applications. Number 131 Columbus Street, Cannonboro, Elliottboro, Council District 4. PMS number 460-08-02-001, zoned LI. Requesting the first one-year extension of a vested right pursuant to section 54-962 that expires on May 16, 2025. Vested right pertains to a special exception granted under section 54-220 with conditions for a full service 175 unit accommodations use in an accommodations overlay zone. The owner is 131 Columbus NPV MCZ SPE LLC. The applicant is Jay Claypool. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this is 131 Columbus Street. As you can see here on the aerial, this is in the accommodations overlay. This is an existing approval. I think they call this the alley, right? It's currently it's a bowling alley. Previously it was a bowling alley. I don't know if they've shut the bowling alley down yet. But at any rate, so this is an existing approval for a hotel use at this location. This is their first of their 5 statutorily basically required to be approved extensions. I will note that at least as of 2 o'clock today, their fee for this application was still outstanding. So we would ask that in any motion for approval that it include getting the fee paid to the city within 24 hours.
Okay.
If
All right.
not already it's completed.
Got it. So we got a condition on this approval, but it's reasonable. And do we have anybody here in opposition to the application of 131 Columbus Street? Seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner applicant here? All right, sir, pay the fee.
Yeah, confirmation, apparently there was processing delay of some kind, it was around noon,
Okay, as long as you have, we'll be able to find it as long as you have, like, yeah.
All right, thank you. All right, so any questions? Ready to vote?
I'll make a motion for approval with a condition that the fee be paid within 24 hours.
All right, thank you, Mr. Bennett. Move for approval with the condition that the fee be paid within 24 hours. Second.
Second.
Mr. Huey seconds the motion. Any discussion? All right, ready to vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes, and you can deliver the check by 5:30 tomorrow. Thank you.
I'm recused on this.
Okay, gotcha. Thank you, Mr. Bennett. All right, the next item on our agenda leaves the room. All right, is B2, 194 Trad Street, Charlestown. Council District 8, TMS number 457-07-04-039, zoned SR2, requesting a special exception under section 54-110F to allow a one-story building addition to extend a non-conforming 7-foot west side setback 9 feet are required. The owner is Laura Weichman Hip. The applicant is Sebastian Von Marshall, Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, you can see the property here, almost to the corner of Murray Boulevard and Trad Street, right next to the Coast Guard Station. Here you can see it on the aerial. The proposal is, and we have all of the additional pictures. Those are all great. All right, so here you can see the site plan. The proposed site plan is to the view to the bottom of the screen. So you can see that they are proposing this addition here that would continue basically an existing setback. They're adding, can't remember what the floor plan called this. I believe it's a gullery kitchen.
Mudroom.
I'm sorry?
Mudroom.
Mudroom, okay. So at any rate, it is a special exception because it's an existing non-conforming setback. Relatively minor extension of that. It's not doing anything with regard to impacting lot coverage or the rear setback. Additionally, as you can see from the photo here, the closest thing to this is the sand volleyball court from the Coast Guard Station. So we don't believe that there's any neighbor impact relative to the request. Again, these are in downtown. The lots are can be difficult to maneuver in at all without some need for relief, and so staff is recommending approval.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody in opposition to the application for 194 Trad Street? All right, seeing no one in opposition, we have the owner applicant here. All right, Mr. Von Marshall, anything you'd like to address with the board?
None at this time, thank you.
Okay. Any questions for Robert? Any questions for owner applicant? I'll make a motion for approval. All right, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Ms. Richards seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes and the special exception for 194 Trad Street is granted. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
All right, the next item on our agenda is B3 1416 Emerald Forest Parkway, Forest Lakes Extension, Council District 2, TMS number 354-01-00-040, zoned SR1, requesting variances from section 54-301 to allow a rear pool screen enclosure with a 10-foot 6-inch rear setback, 25 feet are required, and lot coverage of 42.6%, 35% is required. The owner applicant is Jason Beers. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this property is on Emerald Forest Parkway here in this residential neighborhood that you can see in West Ashland, yes. So, so you can see the neighborhood over here, pretty decent sized lots, but smaller footprints for lot coverage, which, to be honest, is staff's concern with this request. It's not so much the pool or requesting a screened porch, but it's the extent to which the screening, this new structure, it's a roof structure, that would be over the pool and screening of essentially the bulk of the rear yard. You can see the size of it here in the dimensions that have been provided. It will share a gutter with the existing house for rainwater, but from staff's perspective, the lot coverage and just the amount of area being taken up with the screened enclosure exceeds anything else you would see in the neighborhood and would be out of character with the neighborhood itself. The setback, not so much of an issue. just again, given the size of the other lots. If you look in your public comment packets, you will see though that the applicants have letters of support from their neighbors in the area. So they have worked with their neighbors on this request. Unfortunately, from staff's perspective, the extent to which the lot coverage is impacted is just too great and out of character with the rest of the community, so staff has to recommend denial.
All right, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody here in opposition to the application for 1416 Emerald Forest Parkway? All right, seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owners, applicants? Yes. Would you like to present to the board?
Yes.
Okay, come on up, please.
Assuming it'd be denial if I don't. So thank you for your time. I'll try to make it quick. My wife and I bought this house. We've been in Charleston for over 20 years.
And I'm sorry, you are Mr. Pierce.
Yes,
Okay,
yes.
thank you.
We're in what is our forever home. This is where we're going to retire. Our lot is adjacent to a retention pond, which you can see right next to our lot. It's the entire coverage there. And that has actually caused us to not be able to really use our backyard. The mosquito problem in that area is really bad. We've tried everything as far as sprays and machines, and we just don't use our backyard because of this problem. So we saved up years of savings to start this project. This project included putting in some additional concrete and a pool that was approved. This is a two-phase project that was approved and is substantially completed. Now we're substantial enough to be able to start this second phase, which is putting the enclosure so that we can enjoy our backyard that we will have for decades, hopefully. So we see that as an unusual circumstance with us being so close to that retention pond, and the fact that we are so far into the project that, you know, we've dumped our savings into this and will unfortunately not be able to use it as much as we wanted to because of that problem. So we hope you guys can help us out with that.
All right, Mr. Beers, a couple of questions for you. And maybe it's in the file, but do you have a homeowners association where you live?
We do not.
Okay. And do you know? Okay, I see that you've got neighbors who have
There's a map on the next
supported.
page too that shows
Okay.
where those residents are.
Okay. So you've got 4 neighbors who are supporting your application.
Yeah, we went to all 4 neighbors that are attached to our property. They're actually very excited about it. They've been coming by and checking progress, and I'm sure want invitations over to the backyard. And so they all were happy to sign in support of putting in the enclosure. And it is just all screen, so it's see-through, and it is also, as far as lot coverage, if 35% is allowed, this is 40, was it 42?
42, I think.
42, we don't see that as a large variance or you know, addition to what is there for the unusual circumstance that we're in with our project.
Should go back to the neighbors, right? Could you point to the ones that you have approved?
Yeah. So these 2 neighbors, because they attach here, are rear.
I'm sorry, I think we have it actually in the thing. Here we go.
Actually, I like the other one better.
Oh,
I like the other one better. actually.
The other one was mine,
There we
this
go.
is his.
There we go.
Yeah, these 2 that are attached, the rear neighbor and our side neighbor, so all neighbors that can see our backyard have all supported this project. And if you go to the photo overview, you can see there's a ton of trees back there that really encompasses the whole backyard. So they really are the only neighbors that have a view of our backyard and that neighborhood.
All right, does anybody else have any questions for Mr. Pierce?
Yeah.
The trees stay.
Yes. Oh, yeah, we will. That's actually another reason why we want the screen enclosure, which is very secondary, but, there's a lot of debris that comes down that obviously is gonna make it easier for us. We'd rather keep as many trees as possible because we love the look of that, and this will help us, put up with that as well.
The roof structure, is it screening too?
It's screen on the roof too, yeah, full screen.
Mr. Hewitt, you got a
Yeah,
question?
just to clarify, the main purpose of it is because of the bugs.
Because of the mosquitoes that we have not been able to find a solution for, yeah.
Gotcha.
And unfortunately, my wife and I are the lucky ones that all the mosquitoes get attracted to. So we really don't use our backyard because of that.
Okay, any other questions for Mr. Pierce? While
And
he's standing here?
35%, he would not have needed a variance.
Right.
And we're at 42.
If
No, there's the
by
rear
reducing that
setback
lot
too.
coverage, he was not encroaching into the rear
Rear
setback as
setback.
well.
Okay.
Again, because of the size of the neighboring lot, the rear setback was not as much of a concern for staff. It really was about essentially the lot coverage and what this does to this backyard compared to other backyards in the community. This would be an anomaly for that community to basically have a structure this big in the rear yard. Again, understanding it's screened in and it's a livability issue for the
Yeah.
neighbor or for the property owner.
So thank you, Mr. Beers. You can have a seat and we'll call you back up if we need you. The trigger for our zoning ordinance to apply in this case is that it is a permanent structure, is that right?
Correct.
So if they had temporary poles and netting, we wouldn't have any jurisdiction or issue over that, right?
Correct.
It's the permanency of it.
Mhm.
And we don't have any jurisdiction or right to decide whether we believe that it is aesthetically pleasing, I suppose, other than maybe the idea that it shouldn't be a detriment to other properties.
Right. I mean, the question here is, do you think it's a detriment to the neighborhood or out of character with the neighborhood? That would be under your number 4 test. Otherwise, they do hit a number of the elements of the test in terms of they are immediately adjacent to
It's a unique circumstance. for their
unique
lot.
circumstance, that not a bunch of other properties, some other properties in the area, but not a bunch.
Mhm.
I
I mean, I understand staff's objection, at the same time.
Staff will be okay if you don't have the same opinion.
Right.
It seems like the neighbors are.
Exactly, they have neighbor support,
Yeah.
And by having that screening up, a big alligator can't bite you.
That's right.
Well, anybody have any discussion?
I was just broadly curious, how much larger is the screen relative to the pool? I mean, is it? Are you gonna wind up with a pretty, I apologize, I should have asked you this while you're still up here. How much, yeah, if you don't mind, I'm just curious what the rough
Yeah.
footprint of the pool is, if you don't.
Is there a perimeter of hardscape around the pool that the structure will cover?
No, we had to be far enough away from the screen and patio. So it's about this. It covers most of it because we thought when we looked at the lot coverage, well, can we come back at all? But it's within like 3 feet of that, so we couldn't shrink it at all.
That's what I was wondering, okay.
Further discussion? Okay, well, no further discussion and no further questions for the city or for the applicant. Do we have a motion? Somebody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion for approval.
Okay, Mr. McKay moves to approve. Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Okay.
Either
I'll
one,
second.
Mr. Huey, I'll get you in there first. Okay, so we've got a motion to approve. We've got a second. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? And one is opposed, Mr. Bennett. The motion passes by a vote of 5-1, and the variance for 1416 Emerald Forest Parkway is approved. Thank you, Mr. Beard.
Can I confirm, Mr. Goodwin was second?
Mr. Huey was
Mr.
second.
Huey was second.
Yep.
Thank you.
All right, next item on our agenda, B4, 2B Piedmont Avenue, Wagner Terrace, Council District 6, TMS number 463-11-03-122, zoned SR2, requesting variances from section 54-301 to allow an accessory dwelling unit with a 25-foot front setback, 60 feet are required, and a 3.1-foot south side setback, 9 feet are required. The owners are Paul and Stephanie Visser. The applicant is B Studio Architecture, Mr. Somerville.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this property here is on Piedmont Avenue, as you can see, in the Wagner Terrace area of the peninsula. On this image, you can see this is a very oddly shaped lot. There's a lot of weirdness that has occurred on this block in terms of how some of these lots are shaped. Additionally, and I think we have it here on the survey. Additionally, as you can see here on the survey, a large section of the rear of the yard that is within what would normally be the building envelope is also a drainage easement. Yes, drainage easement. So the viability of being able to put a accessory unit on this property in the back is essentially nil. So the architect and the owner of the property have worked very hard to try to figure something out to do something in the side yard. And so they're utilizing the side yard, which has at least a decent amount of space. Here's the street view, pictures of other accessory not ADU, just accessory structures there that you can see. And then, so here you can see a little bit closer with the floor plan, how the two units would interact. You can see here on the elevations. Again, it is tight. In order for them to do entrance and meet parking requirements and everything else, and utilize that side yard, it's just a tight fit. However, you will see here, they have tried to, minimize that garage entrance in terms of putting the balcony and some architectural elements related to that balcony and the roof line. They do have neighbor support from the neighbors at 2 Piedmont. Again, that should be in your packet as well. Again, because these are not uncommon in Wagner Terrace, so we don't believe that it's going to be completely blow up the neighborhood character context, bless you. There's clearly a hardship that is unique to this lot in terms of so much of their otherwise buildable area is occupied by the drainage easement in the rear. Again, acknowledging that it's a tight fit to try to do this in there. It is a minimal, as you can see on the floor plan, it really is a minimal amount of area. It is a 2-bedroom unit that they are proposing, but really somewhat almost studio or efficiency style of a 2-bedroom to try to fit in there. Staff is recommending approval given that we think it meets the test.
Okay, thank you, Robert. Do we have anybody here in opposition to the application for 2B Piedmont Avenue? Seeing no one in opposition, do we have the owner applicant here? Anything you gentlemen would like to say to the board?
The only thing I'd like to add is that
We did have an extra letter from a neighbor, or a text exchange. We weren't able to get them to actually put it in letter form, but it does kind of generally show it.
Okay, and for what property?
The one to the right hand side.
Looking from the street, that's on the right, that's 2A.
Correct, the one like down.
Okay, gotcha.
And the other thing I would also note is that if this particular property, if we were able to do this in the backyard, the side setback would be allowed by right. So it's only a variance because it's before.
We see that.
Yeah, sure, come on up and bring up the
Large, just for.
Extra large for me.
and then could you just please, for the record, just identify your name? and
Chris
address?
Palmer with B Studio Architecture.
Thank you.
But that was this Saturday?
I think it was actually like 2 or 3 weeks ago. They are, life gets in the way sometimes, I guess.
Okay. Make that part of the record. It just doesn't have a date on it. Got it.
All right, so staff is in support, and do we have any questions for Mr. Bonner or questions for the city?
Because it's kind of turn. Does that present any character issues, or that's not really a?
So staff did get hung up a little bit on that, because of the fact that in order to make this work, it is kind of on an angle there in terms of fitting it in. We did have some questions about that. It's not, as you can see on many of these others, they are kind of directly in line with the rest of the property. And that's more of a aesthetic issue. We didn't have anybody from the community that sent any opposition. Clearly, there's no one here today. We did have representation of this text exchange with the folks at 2A Piedmont. Obviously, we had the letter from the folks at 2 Piedmont, but that's kind of the other side. So this would be one where we talked about it back and forth a lot about whether or not that being askew like that, whether or not that was that disruptive. The other element here is positionally on the block. This is not center of the block, and again, this it's in line order with this. These lots are a little oddly shaped, so it will be a little askew, a little bit angled towards the 2A property, but
And the photographs showing the properties that had the ADUs that are close by, they're not really near this one though.
no, those are from just other areas, and I believe they were just from in Wagner Terrace. I think they called them nearby examples, but like nearby as in the larger neighborhood of Wagner Terrace, not necessarily on the block or what have you.
Okay, Mr. Bonner, can you come back up here? I do have a couple questions for you. Don't mind. So do you know what the owner's purpose is for building this accessory dwelling unit?
Yes, it's long-term. There is aging parents that might be coming to join them. At this time, the owners do participate in international rehousings as well. And one of the reasons the second bedroom is in there, and calling it a second bedroom is very close because it is a closet that can hold, a bed for children, basically. That's part of the desire of this property, yes.
Okay. And do you know whether or not there has been any information on this proposed structure provided to the neighborhood association?
We had some issues with timing, so we were not able to go in front of them.
Okay. So to your knowledge, is the neighborhood association aware of this plan?
I mean, zoning is publicly announced, but I don't know specifically.
Okay. Well, you don't have approval, nor do you have objections from the neighborhood association.
That's correct, yes.
But the plans haven't been sent specifically to them. Okay. Robert, do you know whether or not this kind of an accessory unit could be rented on a short-term rental basis?
No.
Okay.
Cannot.
And that's because of the district where it's located in Wagner Terrace, or that's because of other reasons?
That, and you can't purpose build it's an accessory dwelling unit, so you can't short-term rent it.
Be a date restriction.
Yeah, it's a formal ADU, so it can't be used as a short-term rental.
Okay. And it does, usually the aesthetic and architectural sensibilities are expressed by Mr. Bennett, but it does sort of seem to look a little bit askew, like I'm going to a fun house, but that's not really my purview to say whether or not it's aesthetically pleasing to me.
Well, since you brought it up. Well, the thing that's interesting, I don't know if you can flip the site plan.
Yeah, go back.
Briefly, it's aligned to the property line.
Yeah.
Which none of the, sorry, go forward one if you would. So it's aligned to this skew right here.
Right.
Actually, this house isn't necessarily aligned to either. So you wind up with something that's not aligned to either the existing house or the neighboring ones. It's almost like a zigzag.
But you know what, maybe it
Benefit.
matches with the character of the district,
Maybe
because
it's
all those
that.
lot lines
Yeah,
are
that's
just
a fair
crazy.
point. That's a fair point. I do.
Well, they do run in parallel to the road, but
Yeah.
not square to this.
I think what's probably driving this, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that you've got like 18 inches in that back corner with it pinched together. And if you try to rotate it back relative to the adjacent or the existing house, I mean, you'd have no room between the two. So I can understand why twisting it makes sense.
Yeah, and clearly you've got a hardship there with the drainage easement. It doesn't bother me, it's just an interesting application, I wanted to learn a little bit more about it. Thank you, Mr. Bonner.
That is only 5 degrees, which is it's harder to really kind of perceive
Yeah.
than maybe the plan.
Yeah.
should.
They would all know Kevin Bacon, right?
All right, thank you.
Thanks, sir.
Any other questions, discussion? All right, somebody ready to make a motion?
Unless you all feel it needs to go to the neighborhood association.
That would be discussion, and so let's talk about that. Anybody have strong feelings about that?
Kinda.
Yeah. Mhm.
I think, and it's not fair because I don't have it in front of me, but the neighborhood association, I think, does have in their bylaws. I don't know if you want to call it a request or a requirement for projects to come before them, which is different than most neighborhood associations. Most neighborhood associations don't put that in the bylaws. Can you pull up their bylaws?
I'm trying, again, they are a neighborhood association, which means they have no actual authority to require anybody versus an HOA, which can do that. And they have no obligation to enforce their bylaws, but I'm trying to see if I can.
Oh, it's like a position statement, basically, that
Yeah.
anything that doesn't come before them is automatically in a position, but I don't want to
Mhm.
I don't want to guess for them what they might think. Without giving them the opportunity to look at it.
Well, they have a Wikipedia page, but I'm not finding their like.
I haven't been issued my new laptop, so I'm just not as quick as I usually am.
Well, the question isn't really whether or
Yeah.
not they have the authority or power to do anything. The question is whether or not this, as a board, we feel like that they, you know, have some equitable right to come in and take a look at it or approve it or not, or
Yeah.
at least have their voice heard one way or the other, whether they support it or they don't.
And so while they have an official website, it's under construction. So there's no, every calendar that says no upcoming events, so I can't even tell you when they may have their next neighborhood meeting.
Okay, so
They are, yeah.
if we feel like the neighborhood association should have an opportunity to review and comment on this application, then we could defer to provide that opportunity to the applicant and the association. So it depends
Says they
on,
meet the third Monday of every month. So that means, potentially they could be on their agenda
16.
on the 16th and come back to you all for a vote on the 17th. Let you know what they heard.
all right, so what are y'all inclined to do?
I think that makes sense.
Okay. Bennett, Ms. McKay,
It was kind of put out there that you might be using the house for a purpose of, it almost sounds like a mission work or something like that. That would be interesting to know a little bit more about that. I think that's admirable.
Ms. Goodwin, your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree. I think it'd be good to talk to Nate, only because it's a little different. And I think they all know about it.
Okay. All right, I think we might have a consensus if somebody wants to make a motion.
I'll make a motion to defer to allow the applicant time to meet with the neighborhood association and hopefully get some position from them on the project.
All right, is there a second? All right, Mr. Richards, seconds the motion. Motion to defer by Mr. Bennett, seconded by Ms. Richards. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None are opposed. We'll see you back here as soon as you talk with the neighborhood association. Thank you.
And so they do have an action, the one part of the page that is fully blessed out is a request for the neighborhood association letter of support for BZA or BAR items. So they actually have an application or a I don't know, Google form or what have you. So we'll make sure to forward that to you because some little elf just emailed me or texted me the address. So we'll make sure that you get that.
All right, thank you. We'll see you again soon. All right, B5, 107 America Street, East Side, Council District 4, TMS number 459-05-04-007, Zone DR2F, requesting an appeal of a staff denial of a Category 2 residential short-term rental application. The owner applicant, Richard and Megan Schuberg. Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so this is an appeal of a staff denial, essentially zoning administrator's interpretation that the proposed use of this property as a short-term rental does not meet the requirement that the short-term rental use of the residential property be ordinate to the principal use, the principal residence. In this case, you can see the property here. For some reason, we're missing the footprint on the zoning map, but you can see the two structures here. I think we have the actual site plan. So you can see that the STR is proposed for the front building where the owner would live in the rear of the property. In this case, the square footage is, trying to, we have that somewhere. Sorry. Do you remember where this?
Jason's email has it listed, maybe?
Is it Jason's email? Yeah, so in this case, the size of the proposed rental is listed at 1561, so 1,561 square feet. Whereas the owner residence would only be 1,320 square feet. Unfortunately, this had not been caught in previous requests at this property. So one of the reasons why we have an annual permitting process is to ensure annual compliance with the short-term rental requirements. Like I said, unfortunately, the property has previously had a permit for an STR at this location. But during those reviews, for whatever reason, it was not established about the square footages in question. And so when this came through for this annual review, it was caught what the square footages were and that the proposal was not subordinate. And so staff did deny that permit, and then the applicants have appealed that decision.
All right.
Staff, of course, would recommend denial of the appeal.
Upholding the zoning administrator's decision.
Correct.
All right, so unless you all are on opposite sides of an issue, nobody's here in opposition and one of you is for this application, so come on up.
We have to know, are you related?
We are.
Okay.
He's my sister-in-law.
Okay,
Yeah.
we just weren't sure. We weren't
Yeah.
sure. It was just coincidental that we had two
Yes.
folks, same last names.
Okay, so I'm Megan Schuberg. My husband, Richard Schuberg, is the owner with me and our daughter, 5 years old. So we are here to appeal that. The variance of 241 square feet that was never brought to our attention in the past 3 years of operating our Airbnb business. We have only operated this as a short-term rental. And so when digging in a little bit deeper, looking at the definition of accessory use, where a use of a land or of a building or portion thereof customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use of the land or building and located on the same lot with the principal use. This definition focuses on the sole performance and functionality of the use, but not on the size and dimension per the definition in the ordinance. So that's kind of where we're confused on the matter. We're being denied because of a 241 square foot variance, but in here, it doesn't state anything regarding the size and dimensions of it, just the functionality. So that's where we're left in question on this.
All right, so currently, can I see a aerial again of this?
Yeah,
or-
if I could point out too, because it's kind of confusing with all of
Yeah,
this
I'd
in
like
here.
for you to
So
explain.
this right here, this is our neighbor's house. This is our easement, okay, our driveway here. This is unit A, which is our short-term rental.
Okay,
This is our unit B, which is our primary residence.
okay. So you do live there and then you STR and so what are those structures to the right where that pin is stuck in? Is that a separate?
Right here,
Yeah,
this is our.
no,
neighbor's-
the blue pin to the right.
Oh, right here.
So-
Oh,
Yeah.
oh, so this right here, what you're
That's all
looking
the
at,
house.
and I did submit the site plan. This used to be an open porch, an open breezeway. This
Okay.
was enclosed. So what this is right here is the enclosed breezeway. I've got a laundry room, one bedroom, kitchen below this one, master bedroom, living room.
I see. Okay, so that's all part of, and what about the area below? If this is north oriented up, it would be to the south of that, sort of the southeast, I guess, of that.
What is that? I'm so sorry.
What's underneath? So you see where the pin is?
Yeah,
And you've described, the bedroom and what's in that structure. What's the one below it? Yeah, right there.
right there.
Uh-huh.
That is simply so you walk in my front door and it is just a straight hallway back to this room right here, which is the utility room. It houses the washer and the dryer.
All right, so all of this is one structure,
This whole thing is all one structure,
I got you.
correct? And then
Okay.
this here is our
This is the-
primary.
and that's a larger structure than your primary in the rear, is that?
The 241 square foot variance, yes.
Yeah, okay. And, how long have you been renting that short term?
3 years.
Okay. Did you live there? When did you purchase the property?
It was 2021, I believe.
Was there ever a time that you lived there without renting the unit?
Yes, because we did not have our license yet.
Okay,
So once we had submitted for it, that's when we were able to successfully put it on Airbnb and list it as a business.
did you purchase it with the intention of using the second building as a short-term
And
rental?
short-term or long-term rental.
Did it, so yes,
Yes,
was that material to your financial ability to purchase the residence?
what do you mean by material? I'm sorry.
If you had not, did you count on the rental income when you
Yes.
bought the property?
Yes. That is one of
You
my
had an
primary
expectation that you would get the rental income from that property when you
highlights.
purchased
Yes,
it,
in performing.
even though you didn't have a permit yet.
Mhm.
But did you have any idea of whether you might get a permit before
Well-
you purchased?
Well, in all honesty, so, my brother-in-law and sister-in-law, who you'll speak to next,
Right,
came down here. They were operating as a business. We were from Michigan. I don't like the weather. So we decided, okay, we come across this opportunity by a realtor, and it did come from a investment group out of Georgia stating that, that was their intention, was to long-term, short-term rental it. We ran some numbers. We talked to some people in the area, especially my sister-in-law, and we decided to move our family down here and operate as a business doing that. My husband also works for the South Carolina Department of Transportation. I am a freight broker as well, but in order to maintain our residency downtown, we would have to keep this as a short-term rental.
As opposed to a long-term rental, you can
Mhm.
still, I'm assuming they could still use it as a long-term rental.
it
Absolutely.
would still be an income producing property as a long-term, it probably would not be as, revenues would probably not be as high. But I don't know.
There's never any guarantee that they were gonna get that permit.
Right. They didn't have the permit in hand before they closed.
Right.
So, Mr. Summerfield, talk to me about the city's review. The city reviews these issues annually?
Yeah, so the short-term rental program that the city established when they adopted the short-term rental ordinance provided for an annual permit review. In part because what they didn't want to do is they didn't want to establish what we normally do when we give approval for something. It's for that thing to do that thing forever, potentially. And so it does require an annual permit in order to operate an SDR. During that time, we review a number of things. Fire does some stuff, building does some stuff. Unfortunately, as you may or may not know, the short-term rental program, when it was initially started here at the city, was thought that it would be a subordinate activity of the employee that was put in charge of it. It quickly became not a subordinate activity. It quickly became the lion's share of what their work was. And so just this year, we did get funding from council to actually have a short-term rental coordinator. That's all they do. So there is additional quality assurance on these reviews, and that, like I said, that's where these two, as well as another application, similar situation, although they didn't appeal it, came up where we had signed off on annual permits previously without having done the square footage comparison to ensure compliance with the subordinate provision. There is again, The applicant is correct. It does not talk about dimensionality within the code as to subordinate. It has been the position of the city and the planning department and the zoning division that it subordinate would in this case be size. So if the size of your home for the principal use is smaller than that which you're using for your commercial purposes, then that is not subordinate to the principal use of the property for the primary purpose of a residence for the homeowner. So that has been our interpretation. I believe in the past, the board has heard a similar item and upheld that interpretation. I don't think in that case, though, you had the complicating factor of having previously issued a permit to operate in previous years, and then having the issue where it was denied in a subsequent year.
Right, and that's sort of an equitable issue, but I'm not sure it's a legal issue because I think does the code require the owner to go in other words, do they have to qualify under the same criteria on an annual basis?
Yes.
That's what the code requires.
Yeah.
And so regardless of whether there were changes or not, the city has the ability to independently review that decision every year under the code.
Yes, sir.
And I know we have made this determination before, and the only question that I had was whether it had been appealed. And your language in your letter alerted me to that because it looked familiar to me. Did you find a previous appeal or any other? How did you come up with your argument? Is that just?
Basically by going through the ordinance and referencing, what, again, back to the functionality of the use and not based on the size and dimension of the use. And it basically introducing, the subject standards that in the ordinance are lacking support of what is being defined by what Jason had sent me, because it was solely based on square footage variance.
We've had that conversation before too. I think there,
Yes.
A substantially larger piece of the property was being used as the STR, and was the argument put forth that it was therefore the primary use of the property, which I don't think had been perhaps what had been intended when that part of the ordinance was written to permit that. But I think there's also been instances where there's this much bigger difference between the massing or the dimensionality of the two, the primary and the accessory uses in those cases, where you've got a much larger proper building, a much smaller. The differences have been more stark.
So in the 1561 and the 1320, is that based on heated square footage?
Yeah, that would be based on habitable square footage within the two structures.
So since I'm just trying to think about, should there be a credit or should we consider the massing of the building because of its elevated? If we go back to I think that's a different project.
No, this is the same one. This is the front house, I believe.
That's the front house. So the front house has no parking, but the second house in the back has been elevated. So it has, I guess,
Three spots.
Well,
It
yeah.
can accommodate 3 cars.
So why don't we let Ms. Schubert, I mean, and maybe you've done so, but I want to give you an opportunity to explain to the board your position as to why you believe that the structure that you live in is the primary and the rented is the subordinate. What are all the factors or criteria or elements that you think make your residence the primary and the rental the subordinate?
Okay. Well, I just want to start by saying, I mean, we've been operating this STR for 3 years now. And my family takes into great consideration the culture, the charm. We enjoy bringing tourists into this area, this city that we all love. I do proudly hold a 5-star rating on Airbnb currently, and I have upheld that. So I am a super host on Airbnb. And in doing so, that's through me performing and abiding by all the city's rules and regulations. The reason that the front house, which is the larger house, holds more of what I want to be an Airbnb is because of the character. It's the number one thing that I am told about in this city. The character of this home, just the history of it and everything, and especially the area that we're in. I hate to see some of the old homes go and be reconfigured into, modernistic looking homes because quite a few have several, recently. But that's why I hold that front house as it because of its charm, its character. It reels in people into this industry, contributes to the tourism, and just ultimately makes this city thrive. So that's why I feel it's necessary for me to be in the back house. And plus you have a street view. I do offer per the ordinance, I have to offer 1 off-street parking. I can actually accommodate 2 off-street parking spots. So that's where I feel the benefit lies in that home.
And did you ever consider living in the farming home in the
Well,
front and having the
We did,
other unit, the Airbnb?
but the home, in order to be a short-term rental, it has to be 50 years or older. And my home was built in, I believe it was 2019. Yeah, so in order to have a short-term rental, it has to be historically 50 years or older.
Your roof line in the back house compared to the roof line in the front house,
Mhm.
are they the same height? Is one higher?
No, due to the flooding
Mhm.
area, so they had to elevate the back house from what I'm being told. So my home sits higher than that one.
So are you saying that the home that you live in cannot be a short-term rental? You couldn't
No.
move?
No, because it's not 50 years or older.
So is it purely from the city standpoint a square footage issue?
Yeah, it would be how we have interpreted subordinate to the principal use when it comes to specifically a residential, like, again, you have something else approvable for the site, and it's gotta be subordinate and incidental to the principal thing.
Yeah.
Then without any other factor to determine that, we default to this, basically a size comparison.
Okay, so I think, Ms. Schuberg, I think unless anybody else has any questions, we'll let you sit down. We know you've been.
Yeah,
sitting.
my only other question is there anything she can do to shrink the usable square footage of the property? Functional?
Oh, you mean the front house? I mean.
Span.
She could make, yeah, she could make part of it off limit, like, right, she could, I mean, essentially, make a house for her daughter in the.
I think you can go ahead and sit down. And we'll let you know if we have any more questions for
Honestly-
you. Thank you. Okay. So, I'm a little bit concerned about this one because, number one, I hate to, change gears on somebody or, midstream, somebody swimming and you change the current, but at the same time, we have consistently applied this standard before. And when I wanted to hear from the owner applicant why one should be considered primary, and one should be subordinate, everything that I heard, unfortunately to me, indicates that that front house is really the primary because of its history, its architecture, its, quality, its whatever, and the fact that it's, so much older than the building in the back. So I was hoping to hear things that would lead to the conclusion that the structure in the rear was really the primary, but I'm not sure that I could conclude that based upon what I heard. Any thoughts you all have?
Tend to agree.
Yeah.
I think the sighting is also contributes to it. You know, it's right on the front of the property, 'cause with the rest of the neighborhood, it's clear that that is the principal structure on the property. Despite it seems. But I am similarly conflicted. I have a couple maybe follow-up questions for the city. You know, if for whatever reason we conclude that this should be permitted, would they basically be back before us in front of this board annually? If this has to get
Redecided.
reapproved, basically. I mean, I guess the question, the issue before us is an appeal of the decision, so I'm curious, we're not granting necessarily a variance or special exception.
So if you were to overrule the zoning administrator's interpretation that in this case, this unit is not, so it would depend on your motion. So if your motion was to invalidate the premise by which we make our argument that it's subordinate because the primary or the owner occupied house is smaller than the STR house, then we will, I mean, that would be the Board of Zoning Appeals. That would be our new operating standard, which would be that
They would
doesn't
not-
apply.
You would not deny the short-term rental on the same basis.
Correct. If on the other hand, you find that for other factors that aren't necessarily in conflict with our subordinate is smaller versus larger argument, that the owner occupied house is in fact primary and the STR house is subordinate, but not related to our size conversation, then that would apply specifically to this property in that evaluation, in which case we would note that. And again, that would not become a factor in the future when we reviewed it, because we would have had a determination by this board that in this instance, you all have made a finding that the owner occupied home is not, is in fact the primary principal structure, and that the STR is subordinate. So it depends, to be honest, on how this board acts relative to this application.
And I don't know what this board is going to decide. I don't know the motion and I don't know the vote. But I will say this before we even entertain the motion or vote. If the board affirms the zoning administrator's decision and denies your appeal, you have the ability to file a request for reconsideration by the board. And if you were to choose to do so, it would be my recommendation to you that you hire an attorney to, if it's important enough to you financially, to come in here and explain why exactly there's one primary and one subordinate, or if the board is missing something else. I would recommend that to you. You may get approved. I don't know. I may be getting ahead of myself.
Well,
I'm just saying.
So to be primary though, isn't that to be the home that's lived in 24/7, 365? So when we get into the definition of a primary, and I feel like when I expressed the charm, the characteristics of the front home, it was kind of taken. And yes, as far as a focal point is considered, yes, that home is a focal point of the property. However, my primary residence where we reside every day of the year, in and out, houses the supplies and the utilities needed to maintain the front house
Right.
as well, which of course, in our front house, we're not equipped to have anything to do so like that because, you know.
And imagine, if you will, for a moment, a scenario where you have a house, primary structure, and then you have a garage and you have a frog above the garage, right? So you have, and I'm taking it to an extreme, but just to show you
No.
the example. And so, you know, a family lives in the room above the garage and rents out the house, and they say, well, no, of course, the frog is our primary because that's where we live. And that's why residency by itself can't be the test of what is a primary and what is a subordinate. you'd have to look at other characteristics of the property and that's sort of, anyway, but you may have an estoppel theory, you may have other stuff that
Well-
an attorney can,
Well, and just to add one more thing, so there are 3 separate categories of short-term rentals here. So I have always qualified and been approved under a category 2, in which, again, I had stated, there was nothing of determination of size in that category. There is, however, determination of size in category 3. So again, a question to ask is, was this an oversight because someone labeled me, because I know I meet all the criteria of category 2, and that's what I have been operating at, so.
Right.
I just wanted to make that.
thank you.
Thank you
I
for your
appreciate it.
time.
Yeah. All right, further discussion?
With the yearly analysis every year, that kind of kicks it into a whole evaluation process again. Which means that you have to meet the criteria, and I know these kinds of things have come before us before. And it's always been sort of based on size, so. For me, that's kind of like the kicker as to why it probably would not qualify this time.
I'm still trying to figure out how do you get from the ground floor into that house,
Into the primary in the back?
into the back.
It's probably stairs, I would
Their
think.
internal. ground floor.
Yes. Was that calculated?
I'm sorry?
And if that was calculated
No,
in the
stairs
square
aren't
foot
calculated.
Can you show the floor plan?
Yeah, so.
of the house in the back?
Well, I don't have one for the house in the back. I only have the one for the STR, but in the site plan that they did provide, there is a very rough. You can see that the stairway
Yeah,
comes up from the plan right side to enter. I mean, obviously the applicant knows how to enter her home, but essentially that is my understanding of how the back property is entered. It's off of a side stair that probably entered through the parking.
Correct, so.
Area.
Yeah, under the carport.
So there is no front door on that.
Until they
back
get up,
house.
until they get up to that second level.
Correct.
If does that ground floor factor into the square footage calculation? Say if they were to enclose that ground floor, for example, and I don't know if that's.
They could not because it's in FEMA
Well,
flood
okay, that
zone,
was
so
my
it can't be
question.
enclosed for any kind of living space. It can only be used for as they are using it now for parking.
And the STR has an enclosed porch, is that right?
Again, it's not living space, the enclosed porch.
That was not counted.
Should not be a part of any calculation. It basically what's gonna be counted is laundry room, dining room, kitchen, family room, bathroom, bedroom. Wouldn't even count the attic space. Shouldn't count the attic space.
And the porch is not included right now, which would,
Correct. Yeah, the enclosed porch is not a part of it. Should not be a part of it.
all right, further discussion? Okay, what you think?
You know, we can't structure for our friends, but I would sure want to study this a lot closer as the property owner, as you kind of thought and recommended. You know, I would be comfortable deferring if the applicant wanted to study this more, but it's an appeal of.
It's an appeal of a zoning administrative decision, so they would have the ability, yeah, I think we need to decide it. And they would, if we grant the appeal, then it's done.
Right.
And then they can go on about their business the way that they've done it.
Right.
For the past few years. If we deny their appeal, they have the opportunity, that's not the end of the road for them. They can come back here and ask us to reconsider, and or they could appeal to the circuit court to say that we're wrong. And so they do have those avenues available in the event that we were to deny their appeal.
I'll point out if there's an appeal and we reconsider our decision, then it would be reheard from scratch. Correct, at another meeting beyond that one.
Yes, you would have to have a motion to reconsider. That was approved, then we would establish them as a new, essentially as a new case that would come back before this board at a future meeting.
And Rob, who measured those?
I'm sorry?
Who measured those? They're measured?
They're based on the numbers they gave us.
I'm sorry, are you referring to the square footage?
Yes, ma'am, I was,
Oh, that was done by the tax assessor's office. That was done back in 2017. I am on a year waiting list for them to come out and reassess my property.
Are they the only authority through which we can get confirmation about square footages? And
I mean, they could hire an architect to go through and do a formal set of plans and establish and seal them with their stamp asserting different square footages if that would be the other alternative. And you know, we would accept that for discussion.
I think about that only in my own head. There's some question of accuracy as to exact square footage numbers. You know, it's.
Yeah, so yeah, no, if there's a discrepancy and an architect were to go through and they're willing to sign plans describing going through and measuring all the square footage, and if there was a difference, we would definitely take.
And that would certainly be grounds for reconsideration, because then the board would have
Updated information.
decided on the wrong tax.
Yeah.
Yep.
I think with what we know currently, what we've been told currently, to me, it's pretty objective that as of right now, the primary is being used as an STR, and that clearly the city is trying to prevent that. And so while I'm sympathetic to the fact that they've gotten permits in the past, I can't figure out a reason why we would reverse this.
All right, well, it sounds like you and Mr. Goodwin are on the same page. I don't know about Ms. Richards, but most likely as well. But so are we gonna have a motion?
I'll motion to uphold the denial.
Okay, move to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the zoning administrator by Mr. Huey. Is there a second?
Second.
By Ms. Richards, seconds the motion. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The appeal is denied. You do have a deadline to file a request for reconsideration. So I would recommend that you do speak with an attorney. I would recommend that you discuss with that attorney your situation and explain that you may need to come in here for reconsideration and see what they can put together. And if you can measure and something comes out in your favor, that's something else that you may consider doing. This is not the end of the road for you, but take a look into it, okay? I know I'm sorry, it's not an easy decision for anybody, but I hope that you can find somebody to help you. Okay. All right, the next item on our agenda is B 630 Ashton Street, West Side, Council District 6, TMS number 460-11-01-065, Zone DR2F, requesting an appeal of a staff denial of a Category 2 residential short-term rental application. The owner is 30 Ashton Street LLC, Teresa Schoberg. The applicants are Teresa and Robin Schoberg and Jesse Schoberg. All right, Mr. Summerfield.
Mr. Chairman, members of the board, so unfortunately, this is a similar situation to the last item that we heard. This property is on Ashton Street, just what that be east of Haygood, in the West Side neighborhood. You can see the property here in the aerial. You have the house is being used as the STR, it's the one with the red roof on the outline, and then the owners live in the smaller home in the rear. Let's see. So you can see here how basically the site lays out. So you have the primary what from staff's perspective is the principal structure towards the plan view south or bottom of this. And then you have the living area for the homeowners in the rear structure. Unfortunately, we do not have better plans than this. I'm trying to remember the square footages in this case is, remember it's 800 and something for the rear structure, and I can't remember, we totaled all this up and I apologize. What the square footage was for the.
You look at the Preservation Society letter, I think they break it down for you.
Yes, and thank you, Mr. McKay. So yes, we did receive on this one and the one before, a letter from the Preservation Society in support of the staff interpretation. And yeah, so the proposed are the rental structure is 1,094 square feet and the owner's residence is 589 square feet per the doing all the calculations from the measurements that were provided to us. Of course, this is another situation, again, same thing. Unfortunately, permits have been issued in previous years. It was not reviewed for where, you know, the square footage situation, the size, and meeting the requirements with regard to accessory and principal and subordinate. So this year, again, we have full-time person working just on short-term rentals. More attention is being paid to these renewals. And it was determined that given the distribution of the owner to the short-term rental, that it was not meeting that requirement. And so staff would ask that the board uphold our interpretation and our denial of this application.
Okay. All right, Ms. Schoberg, you want to come on up and talk to us about your property? Good.
Not a great public speaker, so I'll do my best.
Okay.
But I do have a lot to say, so if I could just read it and then answer questions, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
And please just state your name and address for the record.
Jessie Schuberg. My address is actually 1675 Pierpont Avenue, but my mother-in-law lives at 30 Ashton Street.
Okay.
Okay, bear with me. I'm here to respectfully appeal the denial of this Category 2 short-term rental license, which has been approved every year since 2021. In a letter from city staff, it was explained that the license denial is due to a new interpretation of the term accessory use, which is found in the prefatory language of the city ordinance's governing requirements for a Category 2 STR permit. In section 54-208.2, subsection A. We'll find that term. According to city staff, this new interpretation requires short-term rentals to be not only secondary in purpose, but now also smaller in size. Sorry. However, this conflicts with the city's own definition seen in section 54-120, which defines accessory use as a use customarily incidental and subordinate to the principal use. This definition refers to the function of the use, not the physical size. Interpreting subordinate to mean smaller imposes a size-based restriction that simply doesn't exist in the ordinance. This type of assumption conflicts with the well-established legal principle known as the rule of lenity, which holds that when language is ambiguous or open for interpretation, zoning laws must be strictly construed in favor of the property owner, not against them. I would like to make 3 key points. First, this denial is based on size restrictions that are not in the Category 2 ordinance at all. In fact, those size-based criteria appear only in the Category 3 section, which governs off-peninsula short-term rentals. The ordinance clearly outlines the criteria for each category in a specific enumerated list. If the intent was to make size a determining factor for Category 2, it would be clearly listed just as it is in Category 3. Its absence here should not be seen as an oversight. It reflects a deliberate and meaningful distinction in the law. Second, the continued operation of this well-maintained home benefits the neighborhood where homes remain in disrepair, where many homes remain in disrepair. It sets a standard of upkeep, attracting respectful guests, fostering pride and revitalization. Denial of this renewal imposes financial hardship on the owner, as this rental has consistently helped supplement the mortgage and fund improvements to maintain the home's character. Meanwhile, the city and county have benefited from taxation of this rental, including but not limited to the accommodations tax, totaling over $16,000 over the past 4 years. Together, these factors underscore the value this short-term rental brings not only to the property owner, but to the broader community and local economy. And thirdly, the law is not being applied consistently. The short-term rental has been approved for the past 4 years under the same conditions. There have been no changes to the ordinance language or operational practices, only the interpretation. Yet a new standard is now being applied without public notice or amendment to the ordinance. Also, there is knowledge of other Category 2 licenses with similar size arrangements having been approved. When asked about this inconsistency, staff stated that decisions are made on a case-by-case basis. This kind of discrepancy standard not only fails to create a consistent and transparent system, it also allows for subjective discretion and potentially even bias. This undermines due process and violates the fundamental principles that laws must provide clear notice and be applied equally. A system in which outcomes vary based on individual interpretation is not only unfair, but erodes public trust in local governance. For these reasons, I respectfully ask the board to overturn this denial and affirm that only the expressly listed requirements in the ordinance should govern short-term rental license decisions. Thank you for your time and dedication to fair and equal application of zoning practices.
Thank you. Very well done and well written, so you. Questions for the owner applicant? Questions for the city?
So when these licenses were issued, how were they issued? They were just issued when someone comes to the desk, they issued, or is there some application that says this is what we're doing?
I think the owner of the property has to check the box on this is the primary, not the subordinate structure, or no? Or is that left to the city to determine for each application?
I will be honest, I don't know what the permit, there is a permit application. To your question, I'm not sure what I'll be perfectly honest, I'm not sure what it looks like in terms of all the boxes that are on there. I think it has a box that you do have to acknowledge that you're in compliance, but I don't know that it gets as fine grained as like specific.
It actually has numbered boxes that you have to check off as you complete each task. And you also have to check off the requirements, and it's not listed in Category 2 that size is a determining factor between the 2 units. It only asks that it's your primary residence. And so within the Category 2 ordinances, we've been approved for 4 years. This will be our 5th year.
I wonder too, if some of the language in the renewal, it was beyond what's required to be listed in the renewal application, if that's a slightly different application. And the reason I'm just skipping through the code, there's a, I can see where there may be some other arguments that might be made about renewals.
Right. Yeah.
Annual basis.
So, and, yeah, and to me, and I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt, but just to speed things along, I don't see how we could possibly grant this appeal having denied the previous one. And that's no slight against you or your presentation or your argument. It's just that when you look at the properties on the whole and you look, can we go back and look at the overview of the structure? I mean,
This
if
one?
we're gonna find, yeah, this application, the property itself, if we are going to find that your sister-in-law's property, that was that she lives in the subordinate.
It's not equally applied, but there are people that I know that have the same situation and they got a reapproval.
I hear you.
So where is it in there? Like, can you point to the ordinance that shows where size is a factor? Because it hasn't been a factor for 4 years.
Okay, let's assume for 1 second that let's assume that I have no idea what the square footage is between those two structures there, okay? My initial, the way that I would interpret that property now is, well, let me ask you a couple questions about it. The one that fronts the street, is that, do you know when that one was built?
It was built in the 20s.
In the 1920s?
Yeah.
And what about the structure in the rear?
I think it was built 2019.
Right, okay. So again, what you have is you have a historic home, a structure that was the original primary residence and was clearly the building that was the, dominant building on the property. And then what the developer has done that has sold it to you is they've built a structure for somebody to live in the back, and they've sold it to you saying you can get it short-term rented. And clearly you could, and you did. But I can't say, looking at it, either and just put aside the square footage for a moment, I can't possibly say that the structure in the rear is the primary and the one in front is the subordinate. It just doesn't make any sense to me from a logical or aesthetic or historical point of view. And so
It's the primary use. The primary use is that someone lives there 365 days a year. The front house is temporarily rented part-time. It's not rented.
I understand the argument. I understand the argument that it's the use that determines primary versus subordinate. I definitely get that, and I understand it. The city is not interpreting its ordinance to say whether or not the building is used as a residence is the ultimate determinant of a primary versus a subordinate. Now, you may be able to, again, I don't want to treat you differently than
Well, each
the
case is
last
different,
application.
and I feel like my argument is somewhat different.
Okay.
So,
How is your argument different from the one we heard?
well, I brought up the rule of lenity, which holds basically the board accountable for, unless if there's any ambiguous language or open for interpretation, which clearly there is, the word subordinate is not smaller, and size is not listed in category 2, but it is in category 3. That whole
I think we heard that,
situation is very ambiguous.
right? Okay.
So
Again, I'm gonna recommend the same thing. Again, I don't know what the board will do, but if the appeal is denied, you would have those same rights to file for reconsideration. And again, I'm not, I'm just suggesting to you that there might be an attorney who might be able to make these
I've spoken
arguments.
with my attorney and
Okay.
he wrapped up everything I had to say, so.
Okay. I understand. Well,
I'm just frustrated because it's not in writing. It's in writing for category 3. It literally says size is subordinate in size. It's not in category 2. So how is it being applied?
Again, I don't know that the decision was made on size alone.
I have a letter from Jason. Can I read that? Because that's what I
Sure.
based my whole argument on, basically.
Okay.
Jason says, good morning. One of the things that has been further defined in the time since this permit was originally approved in 2021 was the determination of accessory use. All short-term rentals, all residential short-term rentals have to be an accessory use to the primary residential use on a property to satisfy the ordinance requirements. The zoning administrator made the determination that size would be the factor. In this instance, the size of proposed rental is 1,075 square feet and the owner's residence is 676 square feet. Therefore, the rental is not subordinate use to the residential. That is the one and only reason that was given for the denial of this short-term rental.
I think that's unfortunate because I think frankly, we would be considering things more than just size in our review of this particular question. We'd be looking at citing, historic use, style, a number of factors that could play into how one would determine what's primary and what's secondary within the same property. It's unfortunate that has been the basis of the administrator's decision.
And I don't know that limits our, in other words, if we find that he was right, but for the wrong reasons, I don't think.
I think you put forth a good argument, but I don't believe that it is. I don't think it's going to meet the same. I'm trying to say, I have a hard time seeing it as materially different from the prior application and from other instances when we come into the same issue where there's some discrepancy as to what's considered primary and what's considered secondary. I think we as a board have been fairly consistent. I don't know if there's anybody who wants further discussion on this. I'm deeply sympathetic, deeply, because this is problematic. But I'm prepared to make a motion to deny the appeal and uphold the staff decision.
All right, so Mr. Bennett has made a motion to deny any further discussion. Is there a second?
Yeah, I mean, I'm sympathetic as well, but I'll second. I think we're denying it for the reason that the city is, trying to do this is so that this exact situation doesn't happen.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the zoning administrator made by Mr. Bennett. We have a second by Mr. Huey. We'll now put it to a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? None are opposed. The motion passes. The appeal is denied and you would have the same rights. And I'll just go ahead and tell you also, both of you on the record, because, and this is one of the reasons why I said it's important. And I know you've consulted with an attorney. Nobody needs to know exactly what y'all have talked about. That's attorney-client privilege. But I'm going to tell you that your right is to come back and request reconsideration here. You also have a right to appeal a decision of this board, and you can do that to the circuit court. That would require you to have an attorney to do that. But we also have in our statute, we have something when there is an appeal to a zoning board decision. There is you can demand and require mediation with the city if you go that route. And sometimes these kinds of issues that are difficult to decide on, the law can be settled in mediation where both sides are trying to compromise and get something done. Because I am concerned about the inequity here and you know, the fact that you all had these permits for a number of years, you know, it doesn't make me feel good about it. So,
Thank you.
all right, thank you.